So, welcome everybody to today's edition of CESI Talks. CESI Talks is part of our overall program WEEP, which aims to bring, how could I say, the EU, its institutions, but also EU policies, particularly social policies, closer to our members and the affiliates, underlining the fact that the European Union is not only always responsible for lowering social standards, but sometimes also for, and very often, for increasing social standards, improving the situation for young people or workers. And today, I am particularly pleased to have with us Mara Brugia. She is the Deputy Director of the European Center for the Development of Vocational Training, CEDEFOP, and Antonio Ranieri, Head of Department for Learning and Employability, and currently also Head of Department for Skills and Labor Market. Very important, I think, also to mention that the mission of the DLE is to support the development and implementation of European policies aimed at increasing attractiveness, effectiveness, and inclusiveness of VET. And I think especially when we speak of the attractiveness and the recognition, I am talking of that, I'm talking to the right persons today. Welcome to today's edition. Thank you very much for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mara, we have seen some new orientations in EU VAT policy since last year. We've seen the adoption of the so-called Osnabrück Declaration, which has been following up on different declarations that was made in the past. What will be the impact of this Osnabrück Declaration? How do you see the new VAT policy framework in the future?
Thank you very much, Klaus. First of all, thank you for inviting CEDEFOP to this interesting talk. We are proud to contribute to it. Concerning your question, I would say that the new orientation in EU VAT policy is twofold. In VAT policy as such, but also in the wider framework. If we take the Council recommendation on VAT and the Osnabrück Declaration, we see that both take a lifelong and learner-centered VAT perspective. And this is crucial because already before the crisis, almost half of Europe's adults had low or outdated skills. And also both, I would say, help raise the perception of VAT, not least through more mobility, more higher VAT, or by tapping VAT's potential to help drive innovation. And also both aim at making VAT, I would say, better suited for its key role across different policy domains beyond education and employment. For example, if we take the Green Deal or the industry strategy, and now the recovery package or the recently adopted social rights pillar action plan, we see that skills development is central to all. So by embedding that policy into the skills agenda and interlinking its follow-up with the support for recovery and the European semester, the wider policy framework establishes VAT, vocational education and training, as a real enabler in the necessary transformation process. So this sends a really strong signal beyond the VAT community. And at CEDEFOP, we clearly highly welcome this approach.
You said you highly welcome this approach as CEDEFOP. You have certainly been a driver also of the development of VAT throughout Europe in the past years. What was the concrete role of CEDEFOP? And do you see anything where you mentioned it indirectly, where the conscious for the importance of VAT has clearly increased in the past years? Can you a little bit give us some explanations here?
Yeah, I mean, indeed, as you said, CEDEFOP's role has been crucial throughout the shaping of the new VAT policy framework, I would say. For example, this entailed sharing our expertise with Commissioner Schmidt and providing evidence at an early stage on the renewed skills agenda and the VAT recommendation. And if we take the Oslo Declaration, we were asked by the German presidency to help shaping and drafting it. So we also analyzed the developments in the previous policy cycle, and we distilled our, I would say, intelligence, research, and evidence into a future-oriented reflection paper, which I believe Antonio will refer to. And we used these to spark off a wider debate at a high-level conference, which saw the participation of commissioners Schmidt and Skinas, but also of the education ministers of Germany, Croatia, and Greece. And this event really proved one cornerstone of the discussions on the way to the final draft of the declaration. And I would like to underline that we are really proud to see that the EU policies reflect our evidence and our conclusions, for example, with their emphasis on advancing continuing VET and on strengthening skills intelligence. These were two issues we were strongly advocating for. But then, of course, our work to inform policy continues because the policy framework is still evolving. For example, the skills intelligence action and the new adult learning agenda are in the pipeline. So it's an ongoing process, policy making, so to say, to which CEDEFOP contributes systematically and proactively, I would say.
Antonio, you're leading the department I just mentioned. Which challenges and opportunities do you see for that in this decade? And maybe to combine it also with a question, because it was mentioned by Mara, who referred to the reflection paper. We read from it that CEDEFOP basically advocates a shift focus from IVET to CVET, so from initial VET to continuing VET. Can you explain a little bit why?
Yeah, I mean, to connect with what Mara was saying, I mean, before this crisis started, I mean, the debate about the new policy cycle on education and training was basically focused on some long-term challenges, so that technology, demography, and so forth, and some European ambitions, including the greening of the economy, the idea of an economy that works for people, the social Europe, and the implication for vocational training. Then the crisis suddenly arrived, and the discussion that was in the making has inevitably become intertwined with the need for a vision for how we can recover, rebuild the economy, etc. So in this sense, this is a great opportunity. I don't want to appear cynical, but it's a great opportunity for vocational training to reinforce its role, driving recovery, and at the same time, reacting to and shaping the long-term mega trends. So, for example, a stronger vocational training can promote the greening of the economy and make it at the same time socially sustainable, so mitigating some possible consequences. Fortunately, we don't start from scratch because European cooperation on vocational training has already produced important results over the last decades, improved transparency, quality assurance, permeability, progression opportunities for further learning, and so forth. Today, I would say the challenge of all challenges is the speed of change. We know where we want to go. We all basically agree about how to go there. The problem is the ability to move fast, much faster than we have done so far. And this is not only a matter of will, but also of identifying the right tools and solutions, including institutional and governance arrangements in which the role of social partners, as you know, is paramount. You mentioned that this shift in focus that we advocate. I mean, actually, it's several years that CEDEFOP, not alone, of course, has been trying to direct or redirect the attention of decision makers towards adults, and not in the sense of simply putting more petrol, I mean, more financial resources to the existence, but to acknowledge the need of real systems of continuing training and adult learning in our countries. Something corresponding, very different, of course, but corresponding to what we have for young people for whom it's normal to study, train, learn at a certain age. It's nothing new. It's the lifelong learning story. But today, I mean, the crisis has made this need more apparent. I mean, today, many indicators tell us that we have reached a turning point. Once the health crisis is under control, we are likely to have a sustained economic recovery for some time, at least. However, the problem we have in some countries more than in others, of course, the problem that people have, especially adults, is whether we will have the skills and the competencies to seize the new opportunities, which, as we know, will not be necessarily the same than before the crisis. And again, the issue, of course, goes also beyond the crisis, because most of the consequences of this rapidly changing labor market, because of technologies, digitalization, and so forth, directly affect those who are already in the labor market, that is, the adult population. And our evidence is that participation in CVET, in continuing vocational education and training, is not sufficient today, and importantly, unevenly distributed. We often talk about the digital divide, but we also have an impressive, when you see the numbers, learning divide when it comes to adults. So CVET is far less effective in reaching out to the people who are most in need of learning, the low educated, the low skilled. So in this perspective, still a long way to go.
Antonio, to stay with you, in the skills agenda, the need for skills strategies is underlined. And if I may quote, sound labor market and skills intelligence. Yeah. If you could just say a couple of words, what is meant by skills intelligence, and how far can skills intelligence offer reliable compass in a dynamically developing environment?
Yeah, I mean, we like to say that in a way, CEDEFOP has invented the skills intelligence. Actually, we have worked for many years on making sense of trends in the labor market, jobs and skills. We look at the issue from different perspectives, so long-term macro trends, so our skills demand and supply forecast, so to say, specific type of skills. We analyze the digital, the green, the key competencies, and more recently also emerging trends by using big data. For example, we collect in real time this huge amount of data from online job advertisements, for instance. For us, more rapid change and growing uncertainty about the future, not only because of the COVID, has meant that we are working on a new generation now of skills intelligence. And our vision for this new skills intelligence is that it should be able to better combine insights from different sources and approaches, so to be, so to say, smarter, but also more timely, and also more actionable by our stakeholders, including social partners. Yes, we believe that skills intelligence has today the potential to become a reliable compass for policy, for social partners, for the other education and labor market stakeholders, and even for people who need to make choices to start in the labor market. They are young people or adults. And of course, to this end, we don't only crunch numbers at CEDEFOP, we also try to support our stakeholders in developing their skills intelligence, make available methodological and practical tools, help to understand what is actually happening in countries, what works, what doesn't. I said, I mean, producing skills intelligence, this is the point. Now, I mean, it's not enough per se. We need to find the right ways to make it actually used by our stakeholders.
And if I may just ask, add a short question. So, what are the main insights from CEDEFOP's skills intelligence?
Yeah, I mean, from our point of view, that is the point of view of vocational education and training policies. It's very important to understand, for example, how these digital green transitions may affect the labor markets. For instance, there is not only one avenue towards a greener economy, and not all possible avenues are equally inclusive. That's why we are currently working on developing specific scenario analysis to show the possible implications of the COVID, of the increasing automation, of the European Green Deal, and so forth, to understand how to make these transitions just and fit for purpose. In general terms, we already see in our scenarios that the realities emerging after the pandemic appear reinforce megatrends that have been, the usual megatrends. For example, the growing importance of the service sector, increasing automation, digitization, and growing labor market polarization towards high-skilled jobs. So such trends are accompanied by growing demand for high-level skills that need to be acquired by an aging population. So we have a double type of problem. The forecast confirmed that what we discussed just before, that is basically almost half of the adult population is in a potential need for upskilling and reskilling. This is our assessment also for the future. And another important finding is about concerns, what we call replacement demand of labor. So not just the new jobs, but the need for replacing people who retires, for instance. This is a huge part of the story. The risk we see is that a substantial share of replacement demand we forecasted a couple of years ago may not materialize because the crisis may accelerate certain processes, automation, for instance, and more employers may decide to replace people with technology instead of with other people. So this particularly concerns people with low, medium level of qualification. And is accompanied, on the other hand, with people employed in highly skilled occupation, like the professionals, for instance, that are less likely to be replaced by technology. And we see growing difficulties in finding professionals in the years to come. So all in all, a scenario that we can say today of increasing mismatching. This is the risk that the green transition may further reinforce.
Yeah, you mentioned it also. We've had quite intensive discussions also within SESI when we speak of the Green Deal. And there are not few member organizations which really have considerable reservations when it comes to the socially just transition. And this is coming back to you, Mara, of course, also, if you think of the new VET and skills policy framework, and specifically the approach that you argue for, which will be the impacts or the benefits in this case for the employees and society, maybe at large?
Well, I would say that both the policy framework and the CEDEFOP's approach have the same objectives, namely to reconcile the EU's economic and social aims. And this for us, it's very important. And in our view, all adults employed or jobless and irrespective of their qualifications and socioeconomic background need to have the opportunity, as also Antonio was saying, to develop their skills to keep up with changing work realities so they can succeed in their personal lives. And we know that skills development, employability, and job satisfaction are very closely linked. So systematic continuing that as part of flexible learning pathways will allow people to progress to higher qualification levels and to acquire the more complex skill sets they will need to seize new opportunities in linear career paths, so to say. And moreover, the current VET policy and our approach also have the potential to promote sustained recovery and make countries and societies more resilient to crisis. And they will also help to meet the objectives of the social rights pillar and a fair distribution of the benefits of growth among all citizens and societies, which is really a crucial aspect in our view.
But maybe as some kind of closing comments or remarks, how do you see the role of social partners in all this, and particularly, of course, of trade union confederations like SESI? As I allowed myself to mention also before we started the interview, that I have to admit that for for many, I think, trade unions, the issue of VAT was very important, but did not have this primordial importance it has now.
Yeah.
How do you see what help is needed? How do you see the role of confederations, but let's say at EU level, but also, of course, national trade unions and social partners?
Well, I would like to say, first of all, that a systemic approach to continuum VAT, which is, let's say, one of the focus of the EU policy framework and one of the priorities we have been advocating for, requires, first of all, shared responsibilities, also effective coordination of policy and practice, and multi-level and multi-stakeholder cooperation. And I would like to stress here the crucial role of social partners in upskilling low-skilled adults, for example, and specifically trade unions can help reach out to target groups and engage in the comprehensive, let's say, learning support that Antonio stressed. And I would also like to call on your members to participate actively in generating skills intelligence within their specific sectors, and perhaps most importantly, to help ensure that not only policymakers, but also employment services use them. And another comment, if I may, is that the pandemic has made clearly visible that the public sector is not immune to workplace change. And it highlighted in particular the crucial role of vet teachers and trainers as key agents of change. So continuing that as the new normal for all also means continuing that as the new normal for teachers and trainers, with the support of your members. And we very much need the support of your members. And at the end of the day, the need for strong partnerships is a leitmotif across the EU policy framework. So we really invite your members to get engaged and to be active and proactive.
Dear Mara, dear Antonio, I would like to thank you very much for your time, for the interview. All the best luck to you, success, all the best luck and success to us. As to have as the leitmotif the strong partnership, we will certainly do our best to support these policies when it comes to the improvement of, I would say, the general vet frame in Europe. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you very much once again for inviting us.